Hi guys, time for another episode of Beyond Letters, episode 9. We're almost at 2 full fingers. Are you excited? I know I am. Today, a handout you've been waiting for a long time. Basically, the suffix able. Every time I ask you for words in specific batches, you always give me words that end with this suffix. You always give me comfortable. So I figured time to show you how I teach these lovely words and how I introduce the suffix in my class. So we have 6 words. All of these words were written by you in batch 1 or batch 2. So we have sociable, vegetable, responsible, comfortable, hospitable, and reliable. Let me explain what the pictures mean, just in case. We have a sociable picture, lots of people doing things, talking to one another. So definitely one of them, or even all of them, are very sociable. We have an onion, which is obviously a vegetable. We have a responsible little boy. So my way of thinking was, if you are a responsible little human being, or basically any human being, whenever you have a pet, you are supposed to take care of it. So you take them for a walk if it's a dog, or you feed it if it's a cat and play with it and so on. So you are responsible when you have a pet to care for. Then you have a comfortable sofa. I think that's pretty obvious. You have a hospitable picture with an open door. The open door means that you're welcoming someone into your home. So basically, mi casa es su casa. Make yourself at home, and all of these wonderful, wonderful phrases for that. Then with reliable, we have a helmet. So my way of thinking was, again, when you're working construction or you're working in a dangerous area, you need to have protective wear of some sort. So you will need to have a reliable helmet. If something falls on your head, you don't die. So basically you can say, I have a reliable piece of equipment, or I have a reliable helmet because it prevents me from dying. That was my way of thinking. So you have reliable equipment, you have a responsible little boy, a hospitable host that opens a door for you, and then a group talking, which is very sociable. So have the students read these words. Interestingly, some of the students might read all of them incorrectly. Some of your students might read some of them incorrectly, but others correctly, which is a very interesting phenomenon in my opinion, because I've had students that were actually able to say vegetable or vegetable, but were not able to say comfortable and said comfortable. And then I've also had students who were not able to say vegetable or comfortable, but they were able to say reliable. So somehow somebody taught them that reliable is the correct pronunciation, and responsible also doesn't usually cause problems, at least with my students. So also with these words, I would like to make you aware, to make students aware, that it's all about the rule, about the suffix able, whether it's spelled with an A or it's spelled with an I, as in responsible or, for example, accessible. It's all the same, and basically there are no exceptions of this rule. If it's a suffix and it's attached to a word, it'll never be pronounced able. And so the other technique I use, basically every time I teach these words, is the bull, or in Polish, bytek, so a little bull. So if I introduce the schwa, and in handout number 2, I did, I show my students these 2 sounds. I ask them, okay, do you remember what the schwa is? Do you remember what the sound is, more or less? Can you try and read this cluster? A bull, perfect. If you think about a bull, it kind of sounds like a bull, or it almost sounds as a bull. So you can think about this suffix in this exact way. Imagine it is a bull. And that's what I actually do with my students. Whenever they make a mistake while they're talking, I don't interrupt them. I do this. And they look at me, they remember the lesson of bull, and they usually self-correct. In this case, in the case of this handout, they can look at the bull, they can look at the schwas, and they can try to read the words. So they have just the beginnings of the word: comfortable, sociable, responsible, vegetable, reliable, hospitable, and so on. So they can try reading these words and saying them correctly. The key here is not to have them read them correctly from the first, because their brains might still be processing the information incorrectly. So some of them might still be saying vegetable or comfortable. No, if you teach them to look at these words through images, so in this case a bull, or at least the two schwas, then it will be much easier for them in the future. So once they practice this in pairs or in groups, reading aloud slowly, hospitable, reliable, sociable, you can move on to the next part. In my case, with my students, very often they have issues with reliable, because they also have this extra little syllable there, which is lia. So I go reliable, 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 reliable. And if they're high level, I introduce the word liable, which is basically pronounced the same way as reliable, right? And so on. So I pay more attention to this word, reliable, because my business students actually need that word for their job. They usually know the word responsible, because they all know the phrase, I'm responsible for something. So that usually is not an issue. So once we practice that, we move on to part 3, where again, I have images, and basically these are not full sentences, but let's say chunks that help students practice these specific sounds. So we have, and words, so we have a reliable, hospitable, and sociable host. A sociable and responsible man. Now look what I've done here. If you remember handout number 1, we had beard, beer, and so on. So maybe if you've already done handout number 1, maybe some of your students will remember what it is. And they'll remember about the bearded man, which means they might actually say a sociable and responsible bearded man. If they do that, buy them a beer. They definitely deserve it. Then we have sentence number 3, a comfortable bed. Bed also comes from the first handout. Number 4, a hospitable climate, just to show the difference that you can have a hospitable person, but you can also have something else that is hospitable. For example, our planet Earth has a hospitable climate, which means we can live here, we can function here, we can survive here. Number 5, we have a reliable vegetable. Number 6, we have a responsible bull, just to torture them a little bit. And then number 7, we have a comfortable vegetable. I know it makes no sense, but the idea is to practice adjectives and nouns, right? Then I would nominate some students to read specific sentences. So Margaret, number 1, Rob, number 5, Matt, number 3, and so on. Then I would have pairs or mini groups read specific chunks and practice, have them work on the chunks together so that they can remember about the able suffix. And if there's time left, we come back to the first part where they look at the words again. This time, no cheat sheets, no bulls, nothing. Just the word as it is. Can they pronounce it correctly or not? Thanks very much for today. Stay tuned for episode 10.